Welcome back to the podcast, the YouTube channel, whatever we're doing. My name is Darson Grantham, Keller Williams agent here in Des Moines, investor in Des Moines, and here we have Jared, and I'll let you introduce yourself in 1 second. On this podcast, basically, we kind of just talk about news in real estate, local markets, things that we're talking about with our clients, and Jared talks more than I do. I try to get a few words in. So I do more of these smaller deals, probably under $2 million is probably my kind of sweet spot. And Jared will range and kind of tell you a little bit about his business, but I'll let him go.
Yeah, so Jared Huseman here, the talker apparently of the duo here, president of the Catalyst team, part of KB Commercial Realty. We are a team specializing in multifamily apartments across the state of Iowa. Our range right now, our average transaction is about $1 million, which is about 24 units in our market. All the way up to about $7 million to $10 million kind of is our range right now. So that $1 to $10 million range, which is quite a range, but that's what we do.
And really specializes in multifamily.
That's the key though, is we do special multifamily and we are across the state. We're growing our team right now to provide more services for all of you out there. And we're always trying to find ways we can ultimately help you as buyers, sellers, owners, make more money investing in real estate, whether you already are looking to buy, we want to help you add equity on the buy. If you're a seller, we want to increase your NOI. We want to get your rents up, we want to get your expenses decreased. So that way, and full transparency here, that's one of the themes of our team. But I want to increase your NOI, increase your profits. That way, when I ask you for a commission, I'm actually earning the right to have that commission charged. I'm not going to be the guy just going to take away fees from you. That's one of the themes of our team. It's a big point for me as a team. I think you're as well. Like, I think anybody as an agent, if you want to provide value and be an advisor in our business, the traditional model of being just a real estate agent is going away. I think that's why we do this podcast. And we're here to just be advisors, talk about it, so we can ultimately help you provide better value. And that's what we're doing here.
Through our experiences, right? So we're talking with hundreds of investors every month, whether it's buying, selling, renting, and with all of that knowledge, that's why we started the podcast, just to share the conversations that we've had.
Yep.
Keeping everyone fairly anonymous, but really just, sharing that. So I want to point on, if you want to share about your hire that you're looking for, do you want to share?
Oh, yeah. So right now we are looking to hire an analyst position on the Catalyst team here. That analyst position would be essentially offering market reports, tracking markets, tracking sales. It also will be analyzing listings and transactions we take part of as a team, as well as offering free analysis for owners and clients of ours on an annual basis, so you can always stay aware of the market. As well as we are looking to hire an analyst, at least 2 years experience, knows how to analyze property on the three ways: comparable, income, and rebuild approach. If you don't know what that is, then you're probably not the right fit, but hopefully they do. So we are looking to hire that and grow. And again, ultimately, we're trying to grow, I think just like you, we want to just offer more services to you guys, because ultimately, I mean, that's the key to any good business, any good owner even, as an apartment owner. This goes back to apartments or housing. I think is the more ways you can offer services and better services to your clients, the more you're going to win. Yeah. It's just a key for all business.
Yeah, you just think of, any good business has value that they're providing. Mm-hmm. And the transactional folks is the slick salesman of 1990s, right? Like, there are them out there. There's of the 3,000 agents, there are transactional agents, and that's fine. That's the way they do business. We kind of want to work in a different way. And we're not on the same team, but our team's kind of thinking that same way.
And we work heavily together. Yeah. We work heavily together too as well. Yeah. I know we always talk about what's news and noteworthy here. So I'm going to get Darson talking with the theme. Yesterday we were both in an event and someone made a statement, and I love Darson's face. They said they tracked, I think it was, over 200 pre-foreclosures in the Iowa market forthcoming. Darson, what are your thoughts on this?
On pre-market foreclosures?
Pre-market foreclosures. According to this study yesterday, we were both in the room. Yeah. The gentleman in front of the room said that they were tracking 200 pre-foreclosures in our market.
Yeah.
News noteworthy. Let's hear it. What do you think?
Let's first to kind of back into what a pre-foreclosure is. It means someone that stopped paying their mortgage. Bank files with the county, from my understanding, files with the county, hey, we're in pre-foreclosure. Then mm-hmm. We're going to set a court date. We're going to sell this house on the courthouse steps if this person does not pay their mortgage.
Someone is 30 days late on paying their mortgage. At the end of the day, that's what it is. Someone is 30 days late on paying their mortgage. That's it. That is pre-foreclosure.
Right. And so whether it's 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days, at some point in there, the bank reports that to the county, just to give the county a heads up, hey, we're gonna send this house to the courthouse steps to sell by the sheriff. And if you want to go do that, it's every other Tuesday at the Polk County Sheriff's Office. There's a handful, 30 people show up. It's really awkward, super quiet. Don't go there for conversations unless you're, I don't know, just hurting for a conversation. It's kind of funny. But anyway, yeah, you can go, you have to buy with cash within 2 hours. So there's a bid. Anyway, so that is when it gets to foreclosure. The reason I laugh at pre-foreclosure is because those are people that are, yes, they are more motivated to sell. Whether there is meat on that bone or not, you have no idea. Mm-hmm. It does not mean it's a good deal. Likely it doesn't mean it's a good deal simply because if they could have sold that property for a profit, they probably would have done it already, right? So you're probably looking at short sales. And although short sales have gone away the last 7-8 years, before that they were very prevalent and very common. There's honestly very few agents that have been through short sales in our market. I have not been through a short sale. I don't know the process. I'm probably not going to spend the time with a buyer in learning it right now because it's such a time-consuming situation. Unless it's someone that
here's something I want to tie off from Darson, and this is why I knew you'd have some thoughts on this here, so hence we want to get some conversation going. But here's the thing about pre-foreclosures too, and I'm just going to do very basic numbers. I'm a numbers guy, if you can't tell. Most people say that a lot. But here's the thing. Okay, so let's say someone today goes into pre-foreclosure and they do not pay their mortgage. Generally speaking, a foreclosure process is going to take anywhere from 12 to 18, 24 months. It is not a quick if people forget that. If you haven't been through the 7, 08, 09 crisis, it takes a long time to foreclose. There's a process you have to go through
in Iowa
to seize that property. In Iowa, thank you. So here's why I say this. The property is underwater. Right now, our market is...
Meaning it is not worth the amount of debt and liens that are against the property.
Yeah, using your assumptions that it's actually not going to be worth whatever, there's not a deal there. Here's the key though. Our property is appreciating at 10% right now annually. That's pretty common, right? So let's use basic math. The house is worth $200,000. Right now today, someone goes into pre-foreclosure. They cannot sell it because their mortgage is $190 on that property. So they can't afford to get out and be even, right? It takes a year to go through this foreclosure process. The property now is worth $220. They sell it, they cover the fees, and that mortgage is paid off.
It's possible.
I'm not saying that's that, but that's the simple answer that even if it is a pre-foreclosure now, by the time it hits the market, it's already appreciated enough to cover any of that gap, to cover the transaction of the sale or any profit have. So again, the whole conversation of pre-foreclosure is kind of ludicrous because by the time it comes out, there are not enough of them to drag the market down right now. It's not going to feel.
Oh, I didn't know that's where we're going. Like the fact that they'll impact the market at all is zero.
And that's the whole point, though. Like when people talk about foreclosures, I think it's ludicrous because whoever talks about foreclosures, generally speaking, I'm gonna make an assumption here, are ones that actually lived through the 07, the 08 crisis and were in the market. And they're the ones that are waiting to that and they're chomping the bits and they're calling for this. I totally understand that. But what we forget is that in 07, 08, I remember this, I was in the market at that time. If you went down a street and every house was listed, half of them were in foreclosure. The other half were actually on the market because someone was about to be in foreclosure. Or, they just wanted to sell because they had to actually sell. So foreclosures only matter when there's enough of them to drag the whole market down. But right now the market's going up, it's dragging everything up, not down. And I don't see that shifting anytime soon. My basic theory still comes back to, right now we're seeing a very tight labor market. We're seeing job growth. Jobs are, the great layoff, basically, not the great layoff, but the great
resignation.
Resignation, thank you. People have jobs, they have money. So
I think it's onto this too. Like the unemployment's really low, right? Mm-hmm. But you still go to restaurants. I did a TikTok on this and I thought it was killer. It did terrible on TikTok, but made me laugh because then I did it. So people still go to restaurants, still go to hotels, and they're pissed because the service sucks. There's not enough workers. There's, the service that you used to have is not there. And people are like, why? Unemployment's so low. It's because those service workers are now working normal business jobs that pay double with normal hours. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that those service workers, they're not going to get refilled. Or whole business is
or to
turned
your point,
down.
Or to your point as well, it's even though service has driven so high for labor for that 17, 18 bucks an hour, making 30, 40 grand, just being a labor force as well. What's happened is that not only can I make more money potentially at a regular corporate job or white collar job, whatever it is, there's also more potential to earn higher in those businesses as well. So that market is still very unserved. And there's really no way to solve it. And in my opinion, technology will do one thing, but I don't know if, as a consumer nation, we will solve that by saying I'm willing to pay who serves me fries at McDonald's $40,000 a year. I don't know if we're, as a consumer, able to do that. The only two ways I can see solving it is through technology and immigration. Not to get political here, but like those are two things we have to solve, because I don't see the average consumer being okay with a $5 McDouble at McDonald's.
I don't know the answer. So like,
Yeah.
that's one thing, I have an opinion on that. You're probably right. I have not done the research. I read a book once called Abundance, and when I read that book, I realized that there is incredibly smart people out there that are working on some crazy, crazy things, and there's probably something out there. So the one thing I think most humans do is they underestimate the human nature and how innovative we actually are, and when push comes to shove, something happens to make sure that life is still good.
Well, and I'll make one point, and I'm going to tie us all back around for a second. We're going to go a little off tangent here, but I always had a theory, always said this, that humans can solve any problem when it's staring them right in the face, but when that problem is 30 years away, 40 years away, we'll never solve it. Yeah. But you give us a massive problem, like go to the moon in 9 years, and we did it. Give us a massive problem.
Did we?
Well, right, flat Earth, right, flat Earth. But then let's look back even like, okay, recently here, COVID. I mean, regardless of your political opinions, let's be honest here, let's go a second here. Regardless of political opinions, we still pushed through a quote-unquote vaccination in 12, 18 months. The fastest time ever is like 7 years. Like when we're faced with huge problems, we'll solve them. So like that's the issue. Now, test all back around for a second, not getting too political here as Darson laughs.
Yeah, we're not going into that.
Right.
This will go off-rail real quick.
We'll have fun. But let's test all back here. As we talk back to the job market, right, and the foreclosures, this is where the reason I use this, and I bring this up for a reason, is it brings the question, I want to hear your thoughts on this, is knowing employment's strong right now, inflation's going up, wages are going up, people have that option to move into, secondary careers or higher careers, whatever it is, where do you invest your money? Because what we're seeing now in rental growth, what I've been seeing here, this is where we're actually releasing our May rental growth survey for One-Star owners. Very commonly, we have been seeing 10% rental growth for the Des Moines market, for Des Moines, Central Iowa. This is not the whole Iowa market, but for Des Moines, we're seeing 10% rental growth. Now, here's the question I don't have answered yet, but I believe I know the answer. We're seeing a higher rental growth in renter by necessity than renter by choice. What that means is renter by choice is A-class luxury, renter by necessity is C-class. And I think we're seeing faster rental growth, maybe 12% or more in the C-class market, and maybe that 8% growth, 7-8% growth in the A-class market. Your thoughts? And the reason, and how do you make money on that? And how do you invest? So what are your thoughts?
I've never been a fan. Let me just take a step back. I've never researched why you would invest in A-class property. I haven't ran the numbers. I haven't looked at appreciation versus cash flow, or whether they're like the bond, right? Or like I've not honestly dug into A-class property rentals, so I don't have an opinion on that. But the necessity rental market is what I've always lived in and thought about, because probably a scarcity mindset of just not understanding the investment world in general, of a C-class property is always going to have tenants. In a crash, the people that are B-A, they sell their house and then they have to rent C. Or they can't rent A and B type properties, they have to go to C. So C is kind of like the very conservative. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you're setting up and putting your portfolio together, I would just say have some of all. Yeah. But the fact that whether it's 8 or 12%, I mean, even at an 8% appreciation in rent on A-class, they're probably, the dollar amount there is probably greater than a 12%, 15% increase in C-class properties.
Well, so what you're talking about there is 8% rental growth on a $2,000 apartment complex is greater than a 12% growth in 1,500, essentially. Yeah, you're right. Mathematically, it is. Mathematically, it's the same number. It's just interesting. It's a good catch. I will say this. This is actually a very interesting conversation a banker I had one time. And again, love to hear your thoughts on it, Darson. But, a banker I've talked to said he actually thinks 60s, 70s, 80s product is actually a better investment. And here's the only reason why. It wasn't about anything you just said. He just said the quality of construction is, I know where that sits. He goes, this A-class stuff, you don't always know who developed it, how they built it, was it thrown up cheap or not? Yeah. And he goes, if you've had something built in the 60s or 70s or even the 80s, 90s, you've been through at least 20 years of owning that property, so you know how it's going to fall, and you know basically all the little nuances that look really nice when you see a nice property have all been basically boiled out.
Yep.
And he goes, I don't like investing in A-class property for that reason, he like lending on it.
Yeah. Well, I think the same. I agree. I don't know the building process, but I can see where that would be the case. The other side of that is your C-class property or your 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you can't build what you can buy those for at an even fraction of the cost. Like it's astronomical if you just buy those, rehab them. The problem is getting the damn sellers to sell them.
Right. Well, it's funny you say that, actually, because that's where one thing we talk about here in our market a lot. I have a lot of buyers all the time coming to me and saying, Jared, I want to buy 48 plus units in Des Moines. 48 or 72 or 100 units complexes. And I always say, that's great. Good luck finding them.
How many is there?
The reason why is because it's funny you said it. Yeah, because here's the thing, is because our market was built in the 60s, 70s. Back then, it was affordable to build an 8-plex, a 12-plex, 24-unit, 36, whatever it may be. But we didn't have the population growth back in 50 years ago in Des Moines to build 100 units. There was no reason to build 100 units because you would have had them totally vacant. So everybody just built onesies, twosies, these smaller projects, because that was all that was needed. We have not seen the birth of bigger apartments in Iowa until the last basically 10, 20 years because we saw the population boom. And to your point, it became actually financially feasible to make that numbers work.
Yeah.
So when someone says, hey, I want to buy in Des Moines, or I want to buy in all of Iowa in general, I want a 100 plus unit complex, there are actually a very small portion of the actual product type, which is why Darson and I make a lot of our money in the small apartments, 4s, 8s, duplexes as well, because that's our supply. I can't create the supply that buyers are looking for in our market.
Yeah. I'm not going to new build apartments. Not my cup of tea. Too much government.
The other thing to look into here is something maybe we're going to talk about here, and we're kind of off subject maybe, but when you are looking at investing in multifamily, there's an actual term being used, if you've ever heard of it, called psychographic. Look at the psychographic of the tenant.
Okay.
And the psychographic of the tenant essentially says, is this essentially a long-term tenant who's low income, is always going to be low income? Is this a transitionary low income property? Is this going to be a A-class building where it's all renter by choice luxury? Is it going to be an A-class building where they're just renting until they can buy a house? There's different psychographics of the tenant's profile, and you can actually look this up.
It's really avatar. Like psychographic's a fancy word. It's what's your avatar.
So, this is why I bring it up, is because me and this lender discussed, would you ever lend on A-class properties? And I said, it depends on a couple things. One, if you're going to lend on A-class properties or buy them. One, who's the builder? I want to know that. That's a big, crucial, from construction background, developer background. I'm telling you, construction matters big time in these A-class stuff. A lot of buyers forget that, and I'm heavy on that. Second, what is the psychographic? I know one property specifically was in the suburbs, and it was trying to offer all the amenities and all of the psychographics of a downtown urban market. And I said, that property's going to suffer. And they said, why? I said, you're trying to attract the downtown crowd to a suburb urban market which did not have the demand for that product type. So they're trying to offer something where there's really no demand for it. And to my knowledge, that properties continue to suffer. So again, these are things to look into and talk to about with your advisors. And I think also, I think it matters for duplexes, houses too. Yeah. Like, if you're going to buy an A-class house, so town of Ron Darson, in like Waukee, let's say, what are the odds that person moves in a year or two and goes buys a house? I don't.
You mean so? Step back.
So if you were selling an A-class rental unit in Grimes, Waukee, Urbandale, what are the odds that person's a transitory tenant where they're going to go buy a house? So I don't know.
Out there, probably not well, right? So
really?
That'd be my guess. Is an A-class renter out there, like they're going an apartment wise or a house?
A house. Hit it from the housing perspective.
Yeah. Usually, you're not going to rent at the same clip that you're going to buy at. You're going to understand if you're planning to move in a year, you're understanding there's a sacrifice for a year. So you're probably going to go B. That'd be that's the people like out-of-state buyers that I have come in and they're like, hey, we're going to hold off. We're going to figure out the area we want to live in. Usually if they're going to go buy a $500,000 house, they're going to rent a $300,000 house. They're not going to go rent a $500,000 house.
Right. Right.
Maybe that's because supply and demand, right? There isn't that many $500,000 houses for rent. But that's the typical. But apartment-wise, they aren't going to go rent an A-class apartment if they're going to go buy a $600,000 house. Mm-hmm. Like that's not the transition. So your A-class apartments, they're going to be apartments by choice. I mean, your young professionals, your older, tired folks that really don't want to have any upkeep.
Yeah, and I will say this, and I've actually made a statement in a professional publication at one point in time, and I had a couple of developers complimenting me on it. This ties back to what we're talking about, though. If you are looking to develop or buy or own A-class multifamily in Iowa, in the suburbs, not downtown urban, it's a whole different market, but in the suburbs, traditionally what I have seen work better is just that true workforce housing apartment, where it's not the amenities, it's a true just 2-bedroom, 1-bath, maybe there's a clubhouse and a pool, but that's it. That's it. There's no other amenities. There's none of the dog parks and the bike racks.
The Grant Cardone upgrades.
Yeah, exactly. There's none of those things. What I've seen work typically better in our market, in the suburbs, we're talking Urbandale, Ankeny, Grimes, Waukee, West Des Moines,
You
Altoona.
still call Urbandale a suburb?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting so it feels so city.
It depends which part of Urbandale are you talking about.
That's true.
The northwest section of Urbandale. But anyway, what I've seen work better in those scenarios is just, again, what I would call an A-class workforce housing. And by, again, A-class, it's a traditional unit. It maybe has a clubhouse, maybe a pool for people that tends to come and, hang out, residents, but it's not all amenitized. The only ones that seem to work well for amenities is our downtown Des Moines urban market, where you actually are choosing to rent there because of the vibe, the atmosphere, and the amenities that those properties offer. So if you are looking to buy in our market, definitely something to think about, consider.
Yeah, this goes back to kind of the living and the vibe thing. In any of the suburbs, there's not, maybe your Jordan Creek area, and maybe your
directly around Jordan Creek.
Direct, like within walking, which there isn't very much.
Right.
Those
you
would
can
be
walk across Middle Civic, Jordan Creek anytime.
And those would be the two vibe areas that are similar to downtown. But
what was the other one?
Your Southwest Prairie Trail.
Yes, I agree. Ankeny, Prairie Trail, potentially Jordan Creek. Those two areas you might get.
And that's the vibe, right? Honestly, I don't know the city planning well enough to know if that's even possible to buy a piece of land and develop a large apartment there. I would guess it's either all been developed or the city's going to say no, because they're going to go to the council and they're going to vote, and it's already planned for. Yeah, I don't know.
I won't go into that. I know enough development city to know the answers to some of those things, but that's for another podcast on time.
So yeah, we'll wrap this one up, and I'll let Jared kind of share where you can find information about Jared at, and what he has going on.
Yeah, I Jared Huseman here again to reiterate here, Catalyst team, part of KB Commercial Realty. You can find us by just googling Catalyst. It's spelled KATALYST, so spelled a little differently, but catalystteam.com, or you can just Google us. Otherwise, my name comes up pretty quickly, pretty easy to find. Thank God for social media and website nowadays, because easy to find.
Yeah.
So find me, and then Darson.
Yeah. So YouTube, obviously, you're watching this. YouTube channel is pretty big. I also have an email that goes out every Friday. We talk about to kind of tell a little bit about the team, what we're doing on the team, and then real estate education. And then also on May 5th, we're doing a 1031 exchange Q&A with some local 1031 experts. So we're excited about that. And if you want to get on that list, get on our email list and look below.
Sure, I want to add that as well. Something you mentioned the email blast. One thing we've been doing, again, to add better value for our clients here, if you do choose to work with us at the Catalyst team, either as a current client or an exclusive agency agreement with us, we do weekly emails to our buyers with potential properties off market we found. Most of our deals last year, 61.5% were done off market. I just put an offer on a deal yesterday. Again, off market, one of my buyers saw the email on. 17 units, 1.2 million, give or take. I can't know all the details, but anyway, that is a deal. So if anybody on here is looking to buy more properties and you're willing to sign exclusive agreement, we have some caveats what that looks like and who we choose to work with. But we do emails weekly for our buyers, so they get first shot at some off-market deals. So if you're interested in off-market deals, reach out.
Yeah, super good deal. I highly recommend that. And just, developing your team, developing your partner makes a lot of sense. So cool. Until next time, appreciate you guys joining us, and we will see you next time.
Yep.